New York City, one of the most famous cities in the world with the skyline we all know. It's a skyline of towering skyscrapers that inspire dreamers from every corner of the world, and among those skyscrapers, there's one that's the most iconic, the Empire State Building. Today, the Empire State Building is the tourist attraction of the city, receiving over 3.5 million visits a year. The Empire State Building is practically synonymous with New York City, but it's not just a tourist attraction. By looking at the building's history, we can actually find a narrative of the city itself. The late 19th century and early 20th century in the US was a time of peak economic development. It was a time of the beginning of the automobile industry. Two tycoons of this industry, John Jacob Rascov of General Motors and Walter Chrysler of Chrysler Corporation, challenged one another to build the tallest skyscraper. Such a competition was essentially a testament to American capitalism. Chrysler began construction of the Chrysler Building first at 405 Lexington Avenue in September 1928. The proposed height was kept a secret. Rascov planned his building at 350 Fifth Avenue, which had been the site of the Waldorf Astoria Hotel from 1897 to 1929. The Chrysler Building was completed in May 1930 and stood at 1,046 feet tall. It held the title of the tallest building in the world for less than a year. The original design of the Empire State Building had a height of around 1,050 feet tall, but because of the competition for the tallest building, the final height of the Chrysler Building led construction chairman and former New York State Governor Al Smith to change the design to include the extra 200-foot spiral at the top. Within 13 months, on April 11, 1931, construction on the Empire State Building was finished. It stood at 102 stories and 1,250 feet high, reaching a quarter mile into the sky. It replaced the Chrysler Building as the world's tallest skyscraper and held that title for over 40 years. The building debuted in grand fashion on May 1, 1931, when President Herbert Hoover pressed a button in Washington, D.C., and the Empire State Building's lights simultaneously turned on. So how does the Empire State Building tell the story of New York? First, it's notable that it was constructed during the Great Depression. Construction employed as many as 3,400 workers on any single day. This imbued New York City with a sense of pride and hope during the bleak times of the Depression. While the effect of the Depression on New York's economy was made painfully apparent by the fact that only 25% of the Empire State's offices had been rented after a year, the building itself, with its architecture and of course its iconic height, remained a symbol of wealth and prosperity. Never mind the fact that it was constructed out of a literal contest to build the tallest building in the world. It reflected a trend towards taller and more modern buildings in urban settings. The early 20th century saw a huge growth in the construction of skyscrapers in cities, particularly New York City and Chicago. This was a result of the demand for more office space for the growing white-collar working class. So while the impressive height and architecture of the Empire State and its contemporaries reflected the exuberance of the city, their practical purposes reflected the economic shift towards more and more working professionals. The many things that skyscrapers and the Empire State Building in particular embodied can be summarized into the American dream. It represented economic growth, but its feat of engineering also represented man achieving the impossible. The Empire State Building today remains a symbol of New York's economy and houses hundreds of corporate offices, but it by far has more cultural significance than anything. Despite the lack of offices leasing the building in its early years during the Depression, the Empire State Building was immediately a visual icon. It was named the 8th wonder of the world and with its title as a record breaker, was a hot tourist attraction from the very beginning. The Empire State Building has been featured in countless films, most notably the 1933 version of King Kong. It's a quintessential feature of postcards, displays colors lights for special occasions, and of course, houses the 86th and 102nd floor observatories that tourists wait hours in line for. And by serving as a cultural icon of New York City, it further reflects the growth and story of the city. So perhaps, the next time you want to better understand the economic and cultural development of any place, look at its buildings.